Fame has always been a hungry beast, devouring those who dare to feed it. Everyone in the entertainment industry knows the cost of success. Whispers in the dark, deals inked in blood, secrets buried beneath mountains of money. But some truths refuse to stay hidden. Some truths claw their way to the surface, gasping for air, demanding to be heard. I didn't believe the rumors at first. Who would? The idea that Michael Jackson wasn't just a victim of media persecution, but of something far more sinister, something orchestrated, something cold and calculated, felt too dark even for an industry built on shadows. But the deeper I dug, the more I heard the same name whispered over and over. Diddy. Jackson wasn't just railing against the pressures of fame in the final years of his life. He wasn't merely lashing out at exploitative record labels. He was exposing something bigger. He was pulling at threads most people wouldn't dare to touch. He spoke of power, real power, the kind that doesn't appear on magazine covers, but moves silently behind the scenes, dictating who rises and who falls. And for that, he became a target. "They're out to get me," Jackson once said in an interview, his voice edged with something raw and frantic. "They don't want me to talk." And then, just like that, he was gone. It was too neat, too sudden. People mourned, of course, the world wept. But behind the scenes, behind the tearful eulogies and candlelight vigils, the industry was buzzing with quiet, uneasy questions. His health had been a topic of concern, but not like this. Not dead in his bed kind of concern. And then there were the warnings. So many of them. Jackson had confided in friends that he didn't think he had much time left, that he was being watched, that he was being controlled. And if you listened closely, if you sifted through the noise, one name kept surfacing. I knew someone, an old friend, who worked security at Neverland Ranch years ago. One night, after a few drinks and a glance over his shoulder, he told me something that still chills me to this day. Michael wasn't paranoid, he said. Not like people think. He was careful, because he knew. Knew what? I asked. His expression darkened, that they were coming for him. He went on to tell me about a conversation he had with Jackson just days before his death. Michael had pulled him aside, voice barely above a whisper, eyes darting to the windows as if expecting someone to be watching. "I don't know who's listening," he'd said, "but there are people. People who want me gone." The words stuck with the guard. They stuck with me, too. Because when the news of Jackson's death broke, the first thing I thought wasn't sadness. It was suspicion, and I wasn't alone. The industry is full of ghosts, careers that vanished overnight, artists who spoke out and were never heard from again. There had already been stories about people who tried to sever ties with Diddy only to watch their lives unravel, relationships ruined, contracts mysteriously pulled. Some had even disappeared from the public eye entirely, as if they had never existed. One artist I knew, someone who had once been close to Diddy but tried to escape his orbit, confided in me over a hushed phone call. I could hear the tremble in her voice, the breath catching in her throat before she spoke. "He knows everything," she whispered. "He has people everywhere." She never said more. I never heard from her again. I'm not saying Diddy had anything to do with Michael Jackson's death. But I will say this. Jackson knew something he wasn't supposed to know. And he wasn't the type to stay silent. He wasn't just fighting against a corrupt industry. He was challenging the unseen forces that controlled it. And when you do that, when you lift the curtain too high and expose the men in the shadows, there's only one way it ever ends. They make sure you never speak again. I've been in the entertainment industry for years, not as a big shot, not even close, just an assistant, a shadow in the background. And when you live in the shadows, you hear things you're not supposed to. Most of them are just stories, urban legends whispered behind velvet curtains. But there was one rumor I never paid attention to, until the night I saw it for myself. It all started at a high-end talent agency in LA, the kind that handles A-listers, where even the assistants know too much. Most names pass through like ghosts, just another deal, another contract. But one name lingered, an unspoken weight in every hushed conversation. Diddy. Not because he was always around, but because of what people said about him. There was something more than just influence, something deeper, something underground, literally. The whispers said there were tunnels, an intricate hidden network connecting Diddy's mansion to others. Some claimed it was an escape route. Others said it was something worse, something designed to keep people from escaping. I laughed it off like everyone else, until one night I got a call, a last-minute errand. A client, one of our biggest, needed paperwork delivered to Diddy's house, late at night, alone. Diddy's mansion was everything you'd expect. Towering walls, state-of-the-art security, the kind of place where power oozes from the cracks in the marble. I handed the paperwork off at the front door, ready to leave, when a guard caught my arm. "You've seen too much." The words sent ice down my spine. What had I seen? Before I could react, he motioned for me to follow. My instincts screamed to run, but my feet moved on their own, drawn into the belly of the house, down a long corridor, past priceless artwork, past doors that whispered secrets. And then we stopped. An ordinary closet door. The guard punched a code into a hidden panel, a mechanical click. The door opened, not to a closet, but to a staircase spiraling downward, swallowed by darkness. He stepped aside, waiting, daring me to enter. I swallowed the lump in my throat and descended. The deeper I went, the colder the air grew, thick with something sour and metallic. The tunnel stretched before me, dimly lit, ancient, and lined with doors. Some led to lavish rooms, the kind fit for royalty. Others, not so much. Chains, stains on the floor, and something else, etched onto steel plaques above the doors. Names. Names of the biggest celebrities in the world. I stopped in my tracks. This wasn't an escape route. It was a cage, a leash. Diddy wasn't just keeping people close, he was keeping them in. Then came the whispers, soft, distant, but growing louder. I wasn't alone. The guard turned to me, his voice a graveled whisper. "This is where it ends. Don't ask questions. Don't come back." And just like that, he was gone. I stood there, my breath the only sound in the suffocating silence. I should have left then, should have turned and run. But curiosity is a poison. My fingers brushed against the cold metal of one of the doors. I leaned in, listening. Something shuffled inside. A breath. A sigh. Then, a knock. Soft, deliberate, coming from the other side. Coming from the... I ran, faster than I ever had, retracing my steps, heart pounding with every echo of my footsteps. Up the stairs, through the mansion, past the silent guards who didn't even blink as I stumbled out into the night air. The next morning I quit. No explanation. Just gone. Some things aren't meant to be known. But late at night, when I hear Diddy's name on the radio or see his face on TV, I think about those doors, the whispers, the knock, and I wonder, who's still down there? I used to think the entertainment industry was all glitz and glamour, a world of flashing lights, million-dollar deals, and untouchable celebrities. But I was wrong. The deeper you go, the uglier it gets, and nothing could have prepared me for what I learned about Diddy. It started one night when I got invited to a high-profile party at his mansion in Miami. This wasn't just any party. It was the kind of event you had to know someone, or owe someone, to even get close to. Celebrities, executives, and socialites, all packed under one roof, sipping top-shelf drinks and whispering secrets behind diamond-studded hands. But something about the atmosphere felt off. In every corner of the house there were baby bottles, not decorations, not part of some weird inside joke. actual baby bottles filled with an unknown liquid. At first I thought it was some eccentric, harmless gimmick, but then I noticed something unsettling. People were drinking from them. And not just the drunkest guests looking for a laugh. Some of the biggest names in the industry sipped from those bottles like it was part of some unspoken ritual. My friend Lisa, an industry veteran, had been to one of these gatherings before. That night she pulled me aside, her voice low, her eyes darting around the room like she expected someone to be listening. "You need to leave," she said. "These bottles, it's not a joke. It's how he keeps people under control." I laughed, trying to brush it off, but she wasn't joking. She told me that the bottles were laced with something, not just drugs, something worse. Something that made people compliant, forgetful, easy to manipulate. She'd seen it before. Guests doing things they would have never done sober. And those who refused, they didn't get invited back. Or worse, they disappeared from the industry altogether. I wanted to leave right then and there, but something in the air, the way people moved, the way the security guards lingered near the exits, made me feel like walking out wasn't an option. And then I heard him. Diddy, laughing low, talking to a woman who looked too young, too innocent to be at a party like this. His voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. "You know you can't leave now, right?" he murmured. "You wouldn't want to do that." The girl nodded, her smile frozen, her eyes wide with something like fear. She didn't leave. She didn't even try. The rest of the night was a blur. The party got wilder, darker. I saw things I can't unsee, things I won't repeat. When I finally decided to make a break for it, a large man stepped in front of the door, shaking his head. "Not yet. Diddy says you stay." My stomach dropped. I don't know how, but I slipped out later when no one was looking. Maybe someone took pity on me. Maybe I just got lucky. But I never went back. And I never spoke about that night. Until now. Years later, I was working security at another celebrity event. I'd heard whispers about Diddy's temper, about how he handled problems, but I never thought I'd witness it firsthand. It was another one of his private events, exclusive as hell. Big names, big egos. But when a certain rapper showed up, someone Diddy had a known feud with, the whole atmosphere shifted. Diddy pulled him aside, his voice low but sharp. "Stay away from Cassie," he said. "That's not a warning, that's a promise." The rapper laughed, shrugged it off. He had no idea who he was dealing with. That night after the party, I saw Diddy make a phone call. His tone was cold, his words clipped. "Take care of it." I didn't think much of it until the next morning when the rapper's car exploded in the middle of the night. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't vandalism. It was a message, and the industry got it loud and clear. Everyone knew who was behind it, but no one said a word. Not the rapper, not his friends, not even the police. Because when someone like Diddy has that much power, that much control, fear keeps people silent. That night I quit. Walked away from the industry for good. But the fear, that stays with you. Even now when I hear his name, I think about those baby bottles, about the girl who never left the party, about the car that went up in flames, and I wonder how many others know the truth, or worse, how many are still stuck inside his world with no way out. Fame is a hungry thing. It swallows people whole, grinds them up, spits them out in pieces too small to recognize. And behind the blinding lights and the velvet ropes, there are rules. Rules written in whispers, inked in silence. Break them, and you don't just lose your career, you lose everything. I used to laugh at conspiracy theories, the kind that said Michael Jackson wasn't just another cautionary tale of excess and addiction, that his fall wasn't an accident, but something more, something designed. But the deeper I dug, the more I heard the same name, over and over, like an echo bouncing off darkened walls. Diddy. At first, I thought it was industry gossip, the kind of late-night chatter people trade in dimly lit hotel bars. But then I started talking to the people who had been close to Michael in those last years, people who weren't looking for fame, who weren't looking for money, people who were scared. Michael knew, one of them told me. He knew they were coming for him. I asked who they were, but the answer never changed. The ones who run everything. The ones who decide who wins and who disappears. And if you listened close, if you really paid attention, one name kept surfacing. Diddy. Michael had always been a fighter. He fought for his art. He fought against the contracts that tried to own him. He fought against the voices that told him to shut up and do as he was told. But in his final days, he wasn't fighting for his career. He was fighting for his life. "They want me gone," he had confided to a friend, just days before he was found lifeless in his home. "They want me silent." And then he was. The official story was neat, almost too neat. A tragic overdose, a doctor to blame, case closed. But the industry buzzed with something colder, something uglier. Those who had tried to pull away from Diddy before had suffered in quiet, terrifying ways. Contracts vanished, fortunes disappeared. People did too, and if they resurfaced, they were different. Hollowed out, as if something had been taken from them. The ones who survived learned to play the game. The ones who didn't, well, you know their names. Or you used to. One woman I knew, a singer who had once stood in Diddy's orbit, called me late one night. Her voice was shaking. "He has people everywhere," she whispered. "You think you're safe, but you're not. No one is." The line went dead. I never heard from her again. I'm not saying Diddy had anything to do with Michael Jackson's death, but I will say this. Michael knew something, and knowing too much in an industry built on secrets is a dangerous thing. You don't just make enemies, you make ghosts, and ghosts don't speak, because the ones who silence them are still watching.